Hello everyone, this is Dr. Leili Hatami. Welcome to the Human Anatomy Chapter 6, Bones and Skeletal Tissues. We are going to begin the study of the skeletal system. If you remember from the previous chapters, we learned about the level of organization, which from smallest to largest, we have the chemical level, consists of atoms, molecules, and organelles. They join together and make cell. So then we have the cellular level, like the skin cell, the blood cells, the bone cells. Then cells join together and make the tissue. So the next level is tissue level, which the example of tissues are the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. Then when more than two tissues join together and perform a function, we are going to have the organ level. What are some examples of the organs in our body? We have the skin as an organ of the integumentary system. We have the heart as an organ of the cardiovascular system. We have the stomach as the organ of digestive system, and also we have bone as the organ of the skeletal system. Then after the organ level, we have the organ system level. The organ system, we have 11 organ system in our body, which like the integumentary system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, and also the skeletal system. And finally, the largest level of organization is the organismal level, or organism like you and me. And we are going to start the skeletal system, which the skeletal system is composed of bones, cartilages, and joints. Yes, it means bone is considered as an organ, like the bones of your skeleton. The bone gonna be found in your arm, like humerus bone. The bone gonna be found in your spine, the vertebrae. The bone of your legs, like femur bone. If you break down any of these structure as a bone, as an organ, you can find different type of tissues, like epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and even nervous tissue in a bone. And bone as a tissue is composed of the bone cells. So we have the skeletal system, which their primary organs are bones. So we have bone as an organ. We also have bone as tissue, which it would be the connective tissue. And also we have the bone as cells. In this chapter, we are going to focus on the bone tissue and bone cells, and also the other component of the skeletal system, which are cartilages. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to study is about the cartilage. Where are these cartilages would be found in our body? What is the basic structure of the cartilage? What are the different types of cartilages and how the cartilage can grow? The first thing, let's go and look at the cartilages going to be found in our body. Can you believe it? In our ear, in the external ear, we have cartilage. The cartilage also gonna be found in our nose, in our joint, between ribs and sternum, in our respiratory tract, in our spine, between two hip bones, in our knee joint, and also the most of the skeleton in the embryo was a cartilage. Okay, let's see. So in our external ear, we have a cartilage. In the nose means our nasal septum, which it's like a wall. It's going to divide our nasal cavity to the right and left nasal cavities, is partially cartilage. And also the tip of your nose, it's made of the cartilage. Articular cartilages. Ortho means joint. The cartilages would be found in the joint. The place which bones meet each other is called joint. We also can find cartilage. To better describe the articular cartilages, you should find the long bones, and then at the ending of these long bones, there is a cartilage which is going to cover the ending of these bones. It's called the articular cartilages. In the larynx or voice box, we can find the cartilage, which like a flap that keeps food from entering the larynx and the lungs, which is called epiglottis. In the respiratory tract, the cartilages that hold open the air tubes of the respiratory system, like in trachea, wall, we can find cartilage. In our spine, between the vertebrae, there is a disc, there is a like pad-like disc, which is gonna be a cartilage. In the pubic symphysis, between the bone, the hip bones, also we have the cartilage. The articular disc within certain movable joints like meniscus in the nose, for example, and also our skeleton before birth, mostly it was cartilage. Okay, now let's look at this picture and review where can we find cartilages throughout our body. Cartilage would be found in the nose. Cartilage would be found at the ending of the long bones as the articular cartilage. The costal cartilage is the cartilage would be found between the ribs and sternum. Cartilage in our spine between the vertebrae as cartilage in intervertebral disc. Look at here, between our right and left hip bones, we can find the pubic symphysis joint, which here we can find a type of cartilage. Even inside of the knee joint, there is a pad-like cartilage, which is called meniscus. And also, if you look at the respiratory tube, you can find many cartilages here. In the larynx, we can find epiglottis cartilage, thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, and also in trachea, we have cartilage as well. Okay, and now let's see what is the structure of cartilage. We studied the cartilage as a tissue before in the tissue chapter, and now we are going to go a little bit in detail. So we already know cartilage is a type of connective tissue. It's a supporting connective tissue. Like other type of connective tissue, we have to define cells and extracellular matrix for the connective tissue. The cells which gonna be found in our cartilage are called chondroblasts and chondrocytes. Chondroblasts are the primary cells of the cartilage, which they're gonna produce the matrix, which we have lots of extracellular matrix around the cells or between the cells. And also the chondrocytes would be found in cartilage, which they're going to maintain the cartilage matrix, and they're going to be found in its space or cavities within the matrix, which is called lacuna. Also, it's important to know the cartilage matrix is hold around 60 to 80% water. So then the cartilage is very resilient. It means it's able to withstand stress, pressure, and deformation without being damaged. It's able to spring back to its original shape after being compressed. Okay, but two facts about the cartilage is that cartilage does not have any blood vessel. Cartilage is avascular. If you remember, one of the other tissues in our body, which they are avascular, is the epithelial tissue. But epithelial tissue is one of our primary tissues in our body. Cartilage is one of the connective tissue, which is avascular, or we can say the only connective tissue which it does not have blood vessels or is avascular is the cartilage. So, but how the cartilage can receive nutrients? Actually, there is a membrane composed of dense connective tissue, which gonna surround the cartilage. It contains the blood vessel, and then it can send the nutrients through diffusion to the cartilaginous cells. So this membrane is called perichondrium. So this peri means around, chondro means cartilage. So perichondrium is a dense connective tissue which is going to be found around the cartilage. This membrane, it serves as a supportive structure for cartilage, contributing to its nutrition, growth, and repair throughout the body. And also, the other fact about the cartilage is that cartilage does not have any nerves. Cartilage serves as a cushion between bones in joints, providing smooth movement and reducing friction. Nerves are sensitive to pressure, stretching, and other mechanical stimuli. Now imagine if cartilage were innervated with nerves, it would result in sensation of pain or discomfort with movement. So that's the reason the cartilage does not have nerves. So remember that there is two no for cartilage: no blood vessels and no nerves. There are three different types of cartilage tissue in our body, which they have different functions, gonna be found in different locations, and also they have kind of different structure. The first special type of cartilage is hyaline cartilage. The hyaline cartilage is super clear and smooth, like glass. The hyaline means glass. That's the reason we call this like glass-like cartilage as the hyaline cartilage. It's the most common type of cartilage in our body, which we can find them at the articular cartilage. It means the cartilage found in the joint at the ending of long bones. Costal cartilage, which is a cartilage between rib and sternum, at the respiratory tract, the larynx and trachea, and also our skeleton before birth. It was the hyaline cartilage, and also going to be found in our nose. Make sure you know where the hyaline cartilage is going to be found. Even though it's the most abundant type of cartilage in our body, it's the weakest type of cartilage because it contains thin collagen fibrils. which these are like tiny fibers that just help give it structure. Despite being weak, it's still super important because it provides support by being flexible. So even though it's not the strongest, it helps our body move smoothly and stay comfortable. Next, we have the elastic cartilage. Elastic cartilage is very similar to the hyaline cartilage, but its matrix contains many elastic fibers. And also, the delicate collagen fibrils going to be found in elastic cartilage as well, but the most abundant fibers found in elastic cartilage is elastic fiber. This cartilage is more elastic than hyaline cartilage and better able to tolerate the repeated bending. Let's see where can we find the elastic cartilage. We can find the elastic cartilage in the epiglottis, which is the cartilage found in our larynx. This cartilage is a flap-like shape which bends down to cover the opening of the larynx each time we swallow. And also there is a highly bendable cartilage found in our external ear. Next, we have the fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is another type of cartilage in our body, but it is very tough. And it's actually, we can say it's the strongest type of cartilage in our body. So strongest type of cartilage in our body because it contains the thick collagen fibers. So these thick collagen fibers are like strong threads. So this type of cartilage is really good at handling pressure and tension. It resists strong compression and also strong tension, both. You can find fibrocartilage in places where there's a lot of pressure or tension, like the discs between your vertebrae in our spine, the shock-absorbing pads in your knee called menisci, and the joints in your pelvis called symphysis pubis. So it's like the body's natural shock absorber, helping to cushion and protect certain parts from getting hurt when you move around. And let's review these three types of cartilage tissue in this picture. So as you can see, the hyaline cartilage and elastic cartilage are very similar. So you can find the chondrocyte in a lacuna. For all of type of cartilages, we have chondrocyte in the lacuna. Then you can see that between the cells there is a matrix, which in matrix of hyaline cartilage we have the collagen fibrils, which the collagen fibrils are so tiny and it's very hard to be able to see them. So in their matrix mostly we have the collagen fibrils. In the matrix of elastic cartilage we have elastic fibers. And in the matrix of fibrocartilage, we have the thick collagen fibers. So because of their different structure, they have different function. The hyaline cartilage is the weakest type of cartilage in our body. The elastic cartilage, because of the elastic fiber, is the highly bendable cartilage, and the fibrocartilage is the most strong cartilage in our body. Okay, but let's review where we can find them in this picture. Okay, so then in this picture you can see the hyaline cartilage by blue color. So cartilage in nose is a hyaline cartilage. Articular cartilage of a joint is a hyaline cartilage. Costal cartilage, the cartilage between ribs and sternum, is a hyaline cartilage. The cartilages would be found in our joint, which we talked about. This, the articular cartilage, is all of them are the hyaline cartilage. And so let's look at the respiratory tract. In the larynx, we have thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, and trachea cartilages, which all of them are hyaline cartilage, which, as you can see, is the most abundant type of cartilage in our body. And let's follow the green color, the cartilage in the external ear, and also the cartilage in our larynx, which is called epiglottis. These are the highly bendable cartilage. These are the elastic cartilages. And let's trace the red color in our spine between the vertebrae, the intervertebral disc. It has the fibrocartilage, the strongest type of cartilage, and also in the pubic symphysis, and also within the knee joint, we have the meniscus as the single term, or menisci as the plural term, which they are fibrocartilage. Okay, let's see how the cartilage can grow in our body. One way is called appositional growth, or growth from outside, and another way is interstitial growth, or growth from inside or within. Let's see how it's gonna happen. The appositional growth, it's like the adding layers to a cake from outside. In this type of growth, the chondroblasts, or the cartilage forming cells, the chondroblasts, which gonna be found in the outer layer, the perichondrium, secretes the new matrix. So let's draw a cartilage, something like that. So inside of the cartilage, we have the chondrocyte within lecuni, or lecuna. Lecuna as a single word, lecuni as the plural. And then we know the around cartilage, we have the perichondrium, or the connective tissue is gonna surround the cartilage and then support it. So we have the perichondrium surrounding the cartilage. And here we have the chondroblasts, which is going to be found at the outer surface of the cartilage in perichondrium. So then they are going to secrete the new matrix here. In this way, the cartilage is growing from outside because of the chondroblast within the perichondrium. So then it's gonna increase the thickness of the cartilage. So it means the new matrix laid down on surface of the cartilage. But what about the interstitial growth? The interstitial growth is another way that cartilage grows, but this time it's from within, like how a balloon gets bigger as you blow air into it. Inside the cartilage, we have chondrocytes. So chondrocyte within lecuni, they are able to divide and secrete the new matrix to expand the cartilage from within. So one more time, if we are going to draw the cartilage like that, then inside we have the chondrocyte within the lecuni, and this time this chondrocyte is going to divide and then get bigger, and then cartilage gets bigger from inside. That is the definition of the interstitial growth. New matrix made within the cartilage as the chondrocyte divide and secrete the new matrix. But the question is that when cartilage grows rapidly before birth, during embryonic development, during childhood and adolescence. However, cartilage stops growing in the late teens when the skeleton itself stops growing. Then after that, chondrocytes do not divide again. As a result, cartilage regenerates poorly in adults, and also their healing process is also limited because the cartilage does not have blood vessels. So if cartilage for any reason has been damaged, the healing process is very, 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 very slow. Okay, and now let's review the growth of cartilage with this picture. As we discussed, we have these two different phases of cartilage growth, the appositional growth and interstitial growth. For appositional growth, we need the periosteum and chondroblast in periosteum, so they are going to secrete the new matrix. So we have the growth of cartilage from outside, and for interstitial growth, as you can see, the cartilage should be very young, as I mentioned, before birth, during childhood or adolescence, and chondrocytes are able to divide and then secrete the new matrix. So we have the cartilage growth from inside. Next, we are going to talk about bones. So as I mentioned before, bones are the primary organs of the skeletal system. We have bone as tissue and we have bone as cells. What are the functions of bones in our body? The first thing that we can remember is that the bones can have supportive function. Bones provide a hard framework that supports the weight of the body. For example, the bones of the legs, they are going to support the trunk of the body in a standing position. Movement, as the skeletal muscles are attached to the bones by tendons and use the bones as levers to move the body and its part. So we can say that bones are involved in a movement of our body or body parts. Protection. The bones of the skull form a protective case for the brain. The vertebrae surround the spinal cord and protect the spinal cord. The rib cage is gonna protect the organs of the thorax, like the lungs and also heart. So we can say the bones can protect the underlying organs from being damaged. And mineral storage. Bones serve as a reservoir for minerals. The most important minerals are calcium and phosphate. So calcium and phosphate are the minerals which they can be stored in our bones, and there is a close relation between bones and blood. So the stored minerals are released into the blood as ions for distribution to all parts of the body as needed, or when we have like extra amount of these minerals in our blood, they can get stored in our bone. So the mineral storage is another function of the bone. And also, can you believe it? Our bones are involved in blood cell formation because bones contain the red bone marrow, and red bone marrow makes the blood cells. In red bone marrow, we have the hematopoietic stem cells, which they are able to divide and differentiate and make the new blood cells. And also, we can consider bone as the energy storage again, because in bone we have yellow marrow, and yellow marrow is the site for fat storage, and fat or lipid is the incredible like fuel for our energy resource. The other important function of bone is energy metabolism. How the bone can be involved in energy metabolism. There are bone producing cells which they are called osteoblasts. So osteoblasts are able to produce the hormone osteocalcin. And through this hormone, they can regulate the blood sugar level and also the energy metabolism. What is a bone tissue? If you remember, there are four basic type of tissues in our body: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. But where is the bone tissue? The bone tissue is one of the connective tissue, is the supporting connective tissue found in our body that makes up our bones. Like other connective tissue, we have to define cells and extracellular matrix. So then the bone tissue is composed of cells and extracellular matrix. The bones are highly vascularized, which means it has a lot of blood vessels running through it. And bone tissue has two main parts: organic and inorganic components. The organic part, which is like around 30% of the bone, it includes cells, fibers, especially collagen, which gives bone its strength, and ground substance, which is like the glue that holds everything together. The inorganic part makes up about 60% of the bone, and it consists of the mineral salts and hydroxyapatites, which this inorganic part or the minerals give bones its hardness and also help them resist compression. Speaking about the bone cells, there are four major cell types of bone cells. We have osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, osteocytes, osteoclasts. So as you can see, they have different names, they have different structure, and they have different function. The osteoprogenitor cells. Osteo means bone. Pero means before. And genic means producing. The osteoprogenitor cells are the stem cells, which means these cells are able to divide and differentiate to another type of cells, which they are osteoblasts. So osteoprogenitor cells, by dividing through the mitosis, they can increase the number of the cells, and then by differentiation, they can make up the osteoblast. What are the osteoblasts? The osteoblasts, like fibroblasts, which they were the primary cells of the proper connective tissue responsible for producing the extracellular matrix for them, or chondroblasts as the primary cells of the cartilage, which they were responsible for producing the extracellular matrix for cartilage. Osteoblasts also responsible for producing the extracellular matrix of the bone. So they are producing and secreting the organic components of the bone matrix, which is called the osteoid. And they are kind of involved in osteogenesis, which osteogenesis means the synthesis of the new matrix. So osteoblast can produce the fibers, ground substance, which when it's not mineralized is called osteoid. So one more time, the osteoblast is responsible to produce the osteoid, which is the unmineralized bone matrix, and composed of the organic components of the bone matrix. Okay, then after osteoblast producing the osteoid, they're going to be surrounded by the bone matrix and are no longer producing the new osteoid. Then we are going to call them as osteocytes, which they are the mature bone cells and going to be found in lacuna. Their job is to keep the bone matrix healthy or maintaining the bone matrix. So it means that the osteoprogenitor cells, through mitosis and through differentiation, they are going to make the osteoblasts. So osteoblasts are going to secrete the organic components of the bone matrix, which is called osteoid, and then after producing the osteoid, they're going to be trapped inside of the bone matrix, and then we're going to call them as osteocytes. So osteocytes are not able to produce the matrix anymore. These are going to be the mature bone cells. They're just going to keep the bone matrix healthy. And then the other type of cells that we have are osteoclasts. Osteoclasts are involved in osteolysis, which means destroying the bone matrix, dissolving the bone matrix. Osteoclasts are the huge cells, which means they are multinucleated, and also they have lots of lysosome organelles with lots of lysosomal enzyme, which the lysosomal enzyme gonna be released outside of the cell. So then this digestive enzyme can dissolve the mineral components of the matrix and release the calcium and phosphate to the blood. So then we can say somehow in our bone we have two different type of cells which they are working like against each other. We have osteoblasts, which the osteoblasts are going to produce the bone. So these are our bone producing cells, bone forming cells, involved in osteogenesis, and then we have the osteoclast, which they are bone destroying cells. Involved in osteolysis. Literally means that the osteoblasts are going to produce the new bone matrix and osteoclasts are going to destroy the old and damaged bone matrix. And always they are working in our bone in like a balanced speed to each other to make our bone healthy and strong. Next concept is about the different type of bones, which we're gonna classify the bones based on their shape. We have long bones, short bones, flat bone, and irregular bones. Long bones, as their name is descriptive, are longer than they are wide. A long bone has a shaft plus two distinct ends. So if I want to draw a long bone, I have to draw something like that. A shaft plus two ending part, which is a long bones. Most bones in our limbs are long bones. The bones of our arm, the bones of our forearm, the bones of our hand, and also in our the thigh region, the leg region, and the foot. So these bones are named for their elongated shape, not their overall size. So it means the bones of fingers and toes are long bones, even they are small. Then we have short bones, which the short bones are kind of cube shape or box shape. They're going to be found in our wrist and ankle. So in our wrist and ankle, which we have like a carpal bones in our wrist and tarsal bones in our ankle. These are the example of the short bones. And flat bones are thin and flattened and usually curved. Most cranial bones of the skull are flat. And also the ribs, sternum, scapula, the shoulder blade, these are also considered as flat bones. Then irregular bones, they don't have any like the kind of a shape that we can describe it. So they do not fit into these like previous categories. So the best example is the vertebrae and then hip bones. Okay, let's look at these different classification of bones in this picture. So as we discussed before, the long bone are longer than wider. It's not about their size, so we can find them in our arm, in our forearm. The fingers are long bones, in our thigh region, in our leg, and also the toes are long bones. And then the short bones, which gonna be found in tarsal region, the ankle, and also the carpal bones in our wrist are short bones. The flat bones, so these are the flat, thin, and kind of curved. So the sternum is a flat bone. Most of the cranial bones, like our frontal bone, parietal bone, occipital bone, temporal bone, these are flat bone, and also our ribs are flat bones. And then irregular bones like vertebrae and also the hip, it considered as the irregular bones. But there is another bone which is called sesamoid bone. The sesamoid bone is shaped like a sesame seed. So these are the special type of short bone that forms within a tendon. So if I go back to this slide, so you can see the sesamoid bones gonna be under short bones. These are very like a tiny bones gonna be found within a tendon. Tendon is the dense regular connective tissue between muscle and bone. So the best example for sesamoid bone is a kneecap or patella bone. So then here we have this bone is called patella or kneecap, which is the sesamoid bone. Okay, next let's look at the structure of a long bone. In a long bone, the shaft is called diaphysis, and then two endings are called epiphysis. Diaphysis is this tubular shaft or the main part of the bone that forms the long axis. And as you can see, it's surrounded by the compact bone, the dense and the strong type of bone, and it encloses the medullary cavity, which the medullary cavity contains bone marrow. So during the childhood, during the adolescence, inside of the medullary cavity, we have red bone marrow responsible for production of the blood cells. And then after puberty or adolescence, we have yellow bone marrow instead of the red bone marrow, which the yellow bone marrow is a resource for energy, which is going to store the fat or lipid. Then these two endings part of the long bone is called epiphysis. The epiphyses are made of external compact bone and internal spongy bone, which the spongy bone is lighter and has a more open spaces. Then regarding the epiphyses, you should know that the articular cartilage, which is the hyaline cartilage, is going to cover the articular surfaces. So as you can see, the articular cartilage is going to cover the epiphysis. Then it's the parts of which are the parts that come into contact with other bones in a joint and helping to reduce friction and absorb the shock. There is other structure in adult which is called the epiphyseal line. The epiphyseal line would be found between the diaphysis and each epiphysis. Actually, the epiphyseal line is the remnant of childhood bone growth, which it was used to call as epiphyseal plate or growth plate. So it means during the childhood, between the epiphysis and diaphysis, there is an epiphyseal plate or growth plate, which the epiphyseal plate or growth plate is the hyaline cartilage. And because of the presence of the epiphyseal plate, we can grow longer or become taller. But after the epiphyseal plate or growth plate has been closed, then it's going to be bony, and then it's going to be called as epiphyseal line. So that is one of the differences between the adult bone and the child bone, which in adult bone we have the epiphyseal line, and in child bone we have the cartilage between the epiphysis and diaphysis, which is called the epiphyseal plate or growth plate. Okay, and also related to the long bone, there are membranes which the membranes are called periosteum and endosteum. Hopefully you remember the precondyrium. The precondyrium is a dense connective tissue surrounding the cartilage. As peri means around, chondro means cartilage, but here we have periosteum. We have osteo means bone. So periosteum, it means the dense connective tissue covering the outside of the bone. But except the joint surfaces, except the part that we have the articular cartilage, then we do not have the periosteum. So if you look at this picture, you can see periosteum is going to cover all parts of the bone from outside except the articular cartilage. So it contains the osteoprogenitor cells, the osteoblasts and osteoclasts, and also it contains many nerve fiber and blood vessels. And there is another membrane related to the bone is called endosteum, which endosteum is a delicate connective tissue covering the internal bone surface. So as you can see in this picture, this is the medullary cavity. You can find the yellow bone marrow in an adult bone. That endosteum is gonna cover or line the internal surface of the bone, and the external surface of the bone gonna be covered by periosteum. So we have periosteum is gonna cover the external surface of the bone, and endosteum which gonna line the internal bone surface. Okay, what about the structure of short, irregular, and flat bones? Let's look at the structure of the flat bone by our naked eyes without using the microscope. A flat bone like the cranial bone, it can have like compact bone, is strong and dense bone outside. And then in between, we can find the spongy bone, the bone with lots of open spaces like a sponge. So we have spongy bone in between and compact bone outside. Short, irregular, and flat bones have much the same composition as long bones. They all have periosteum, is a connective tissue covering the outside of the bone, and then the endosteum, which covered the spongy bone internally. They do not have any epiphysis or epiphysis. They contain bone marrow but no marrow cavity. The bone marrow gonna be found between the trabeculae of their spongy bone, like here inside of this. So let me just color the like bone marrow, which mostly are red bone marrow, gonna be found here in these open spaces between the trabeculae of the spongy bone. And then the spongy bone, the internal spongy bone of flat bone, is called diploe. Let's see what is the relation between the stress and bone design. Anatomy of any particular bone reflects the particular stresses placed upon them, like weight, the body weight, or the muscle action which pull the bones. These stresses can be like compression and tension. As you can see on this picture, we have the bone of the thigh region, which is called femur. So the load here is body weight. So then we can experience compression at one side and stretch or tension at another side. So therefore, the external surfaces of the bone is going to experience lots of stresses. So we have greatest compression and tension at the external surfaces of the bone. That's the reason the external surface of the bone would be stronger and denser as we have the compact bone here. But let's look at here. At the center of the bone, which we have the medullary cavity, there is a point of no stress. This region, which we have medullary cavity, experiences no mechanical stress. So then the medullary cavity exists as a storage space and also to lighten the bone. Okay, as you notice, we can divide the bones to the compact bone and a spongy bone. Compact bone is strong and dense bone, which is going to be found the outer layer of the bone. And a spongy bone or cancellous bone is going to be found at the internal part of the bone, and it's like a sponge. It has many open spaces. Let's look at the microscopic structure of the compact bone. The compact bone, it has an important structure which is called ostean or Hevesian system. The ostean is only going to be found in our compact bone. The ostean is a basic structure of the compact bone. It's made up of concentric layers surrounding a central canal. So if I want to draw the ostean, I should draw the central canal and then the concentric layer of the bone matrix, including the cells and also the collagen fibers found around the central canal. Each of these layers is called lamellae. So lamellae is a circular bone tissue around the central canal. So we have this as lamellae. Each of these concentric or circular layer is called lamella or lamellae, as lamella is a single term, lamellae is the, or lamellae as the plural term. So each of these circular layer of bone is called lamellae. And then at each layer, we can find the bone cells. Yes, which bone cell is going to be found here? Within the matrix, inside of the space, inside of the lacunae. These are osteocytes. So the osteocytes going to be found within a space inside of the bone matrix. And then these cells gonna be in contact with each other by these tiny canals. So in each layer, we can find this osteocyte, and then there are these tiny canals which the osteocytes can connect to each other by the gap junction and send some nutrients from one cell to another cell. And as I mentioned before, at the center of this system or this structure, we have the central canal, which at the central canal you can find the blood vessel like artery, vein, and also the nerve and lymphatic system. That is the central canal. Okay, let's look at this picture one more time and review the osteon. So you can see the structure of a long bone, as we have the outer compact bone and inner spongy bone. The compact bone is composed of this structure, this basic structure as osteon. So each of these is called the osteon. If we bring out one osteon, you can see something like that. It composed of the circular layer, the concentric layer around the central canal. So at the central canal, you can find nerve, vein, and artery. And at each layer, you can find the osteocyte in a lacuna, which the osteocyte can be connected to each other by these very tiny canals, as it's called canaliculi. So this is another picture of the osteon that you can see how this circular layer going to be found around the central canal. Please make sure you know in central canal we have this blood vessel, artery, vein, and also the nerve fiber. What about the microscopic structure of the spongy bone? The first thing that you have to remember that there is no osteons. Then the spongy bone is like a sponge. It has many open spaces, which inside of these open spaces, we mentioned that we can find the red bone marrow here. And these are the tiny beams of the bone tissue, which is called trabeculae. So trabeculae are the structures of the spongy bone. These tiny beams of the bone tissue is called the spongy bone, but still we can define or find the endosteum, periosteum for our spongy bone, as the endosteum is gonna line each trabeculae, and also inside of the endosteum we can find the osteoblast and osteoclast, and then this is a marrow space which we have the bone marrow here. What about the bone development? We have the bone development which happening before birth, and some is going to continue after birth as well. The ossification or osteogenesis is the process of the bone tissue formation. We have two types of bone tissue formation: intramembranous ossification and endochondral ossification. Intra means inside. The ossification means bone formation. Intramembranous ossification means that we should have a membrane in the embryo, which this membrane of the embryo is called mesenchyme. So mesenchyme is a membrane of the embryo, which inside of this membrane or inside of this mesenchyme, we're going to have the bone formation. So then the bones are called membrane bones. Some of the bones in our body, like frontal bones, cranial bones, this is going to be ossified through intramembranous ossification. And the next one is called endochondral ossification. Again, endo means inside. Recall that. Chondro means cartilage. So it's obvious, right? We have bone formation inside of the cartilage. So then the our skeleton, the most of our skeleton before birth, it was the hyaline cartilage, okay? So it means inside of the hyaline cartilage, we're gonna have the bone tissue formation. So please make sure you know the intramembrane, for intramembranous ossification, we should have the mesenchyme, which is the embryonic tissue. And then inside of the mesenchyme, we're gonna have the bone formation. For endochondral ossification, we must have the cartilage. But which cartilage? Elastic cartilage, fibrocartilage, or hyaline cartilage? We have the hyaline cartilage, as most of our skeleton before birth, it was the hyaline cartilage. Then inside of the hyaline cartilage, we're going to have the bone formation. Now let's have a quick review of the intramembranous ossification. So for intramembranous ossification, which gonna begin at the week 8 of our embryonic development, we need to have the mesenchymal tissue or mesenchyme or the mesenchymal cells, which these mesenchymal cells are able to divide and differentiate to the new cells, which they are osteoblasts. Recall the osteoblast job. The osteoblasts are able to produce the bone matrix, and which is called the osteoid, the organic bone matrix. So these cluster of the osteoblasts within the mesenchyme is called the ossification center. So we have the first ossification center at the week 8 of our embryonic development. Now we have the osteoblast started producing and secreting these organic matrix around the cells. Then they are kind of continuing producing the bone matrix, and also the calcium and phosphate starting to be deposited on this osteoid, and now we have a calcified bone matrix. Gradually this osteoblast is going to be trapped inside of this calcified matrix, and after that we are going to be called as osteocyte. Now we have the osteocyte, which they're going to be found inside of the lacunae, as you can see, and then around we have the osteoblast. They continue like growing, and then we are going to found a bone, which is most likely like a spongy bone. It's called woven bone, and also at this time the preosteum also going to be formed around this temporary bone, and then at the final step the compact bone replaces this woven bone, and just deep to the preosteum, as you can see, we have the compact bone, and inside we have the spongy bone, and then the bone marrow develops, and this is the whole process of the intramembranous ossification. So as you noticed, the flat bones is going to be made by intramembranous ossification. As we saw that the flat bone is like a sandwich. It has this compact bone like a bread at two sides, and then the spongy bone in between. What about the endochondral ossification? Long bones are being ossified through the endochondral ossification. It means that at first we should have a hyaline cartilage model. So it's super important to know that we have a hyaline cartilage model, and then we have to destroy this hyaline cartilage. Then after destroying the hyaline cartilage, the spongy bone is forming instead. Then medullary cavity gonna be made at the shaft of these hyaline cartilage model, and then gradually we're gonna have the other ossification center at the ending part of our hyaline cartilage, which is gonna make our epiphysis. So one more time, we have two ossification center during the endochondral ossification. Primary ossification center, which we can find it at the early time of the week 9 of our embryonic development at the diaphysis of our hyaline cartilage model, and then during the birth time, we have the secondary ossification center, which is going to be found at these two ending part of our hyaline cartilage model. So as you can see, all parts of the bone or the hyaline cartilage model is going to be bony, except these two regions, which we have the epiphyseal plate cartilage, which is the hyaline cartilage between the epiphysis and diaphysis. It's going to be our growth plate, and it makes our bones longer. And then also the articular cartilage, which can cover the epiphysis or ending of the long bone. These two parts is going to stay cartilaginous, but the articular cartilage is stay cartilaginous till the end of our life, but the epiphyseal plate cartilage, it can become bony at the age of 18 for girls and the age of 21 for boys. The epiphyseal plate cartilage, it becomes bony, and after that it's going to be called as epiphyseal line. Okay, so then there is an X-ray image that you can see, and you can compare the bones of an adult and a child. Growth plates, also known as epiphyseal plates, appear differently on X-rays compared to other parts of the bone. That's because of the cartilaginous composition and also their role in bone growth. So as you can see in this left side picture, you can find some kind of dark line, the thin dark lines between the epiphysis and diaphysis of these long bones, the fingers. In children, the bones are still growing and developing, so their X-ray may show growth plates. So this dark line here, it's not a fracture line. These are actually the growth plate, and it shows that this person is still growing and their growth plate is open. But at this picture, you can see these growth plates are absent or they're being closed, so that it's showing that this is a X-ray of adult, or that may be a child, but they're for some reason their growth plate has been closed. So this is a X-ray of the child, or better to say that this has the open growth plate, but this X-ray, you can see the growth plate is being closed. So closed growth plate. So we call the closed growth plate as epiphyseal line, and the open growth plate as epiphyseal cartilages or epiphyseal plates. So epiphyseal plate is a hyaline cartilage and epiphyseal line is a bone. Last but not least, we have the growth of endochondral bones. We can divide the growth of endochondral bones, mostly our long bones, to the appositional growth and interstitial growth. The appositional growth is the growth of the bone by addition of the bone tissue to its surface. So it's kind of the growing of the bone in wet. So then the bone grows wider. New bone tissue is added to its surface. So if I want to draw a cross section of the bone, this is a medullary cavity and then the bone. Then the bone is growing through its surface. So then it grows wider. What about the interstitial growth, which is also called as longitudinal growth? It's a growth in lengths of the long bones that because of these interstitial growth, you can become taller or shorter. So for interstitial growth, we need to have the epiphyseal plate. The epiphyseal plate or growth plate should be open, should be cartilaginous, which is a hyaline cartilage. Then the chondrocyte, the chondroblast, chondrocyte inside of this epiphyseal plate or growth plate, they can divide and then become like bony after that. Then they increase the length of the long bones. So while appositional growth makes bones wider by adding new tissues to their surface, longitudinal growth happens at the growth plates where new cartilage is produced and gradually replaced by bone, resulting in an increase in bone length. So if I want to draw the interstitial growth, I should draw something like that. We have a long bone and then the epiphyse, then diaphyse is here, and then we have here our epiphyseal plate, which is still open, is cartilaginous, and then the chondrocyte divide and then become bony, and in this way we can grow longer. Okay. So then there are some hormones which they can regulate our bone growth in the different time of our life. We have growth hormone, which can be very important during our infancy and childhood. We have the testosterone and estrogen hormone, the sex hormone, which are important during our puberty, and also the thyroid hormone, which can be involved during the entire our life. So let's start with the growth hormone, which is the most important hormone gonna be produced and secreted by the pituitary gland. The pituitary is an endocrine gland located in our brain, which they can be secreted in our blood, and then they are going to stimulate the epiphyseal plate. So they are stimulating the epiphyseal plate activity during infancy and childhood. Then they kind of encourage or stimulate our interstitial or longitudinal growth. Without growth hormone, we can become short in our length. So thyroid hormone, this is the hormone going to be produced and secreted by thyroid glands in our neck region. This one helps regulate the activity of growth hormone. It's like a partner in crime, making sure growth hormone does its job properly. It also helps ensure that bones grow in the right proportions so you don't end up with weirdly shaped bones. And finally, testosterone and estrogen. Testosterone in males, estrogen in females. These are the sex hormones. When puberty hits, these hormones can be produced and secreted into our blood, and then they are going to promote the big growth spurts. They're responsible for those sudden growth spurts you might notice during your teenage years. But they also play a role in closing the growth plate when you're done growing. So then they are going to induce epiphyseal plate exposure. So, and then finally, the excesses or deficits of any of these hormones can cause abnormal skeletal growth. Next concept is about the bone deposit and removal, or we can call this as bone remodeling. So far, we talked about the bone formation, which starts before birth. Then we talked about the bone growth. And now we are going to talk about the bone remodeling. We have the intramembranous and endochondral ossification as the mechanism or the ways of bone formations. We had the appositional growth and interstitial growth as the way of bone growth. And now we have bone remodeling. This is a process of building up and breaking down the bone tissue, which can happen during our entire life. Bone remodeling is bone deposit and bone removal. Which bone remodeling happens on inner surfaces of the bone, which is called endosseal surfaces, which we have the osteoblast and osteoclast there. So osteoblast, as we mentioned before, these are the bone forming cells responsible for bone deposition, and osteoclast as our bone resorbing or bone destroying cells are responsible for bone resorption. And always we should have a balance between bone deposition and bone reabsorption. Always the activity of osteoblast and osteoclast should be the same. So then we're gonna end up with a healthy and normal and strong bones. And also the bone remodeling, one of the purposes that we have this kind of bone remodeling, it's helps maintaining the constant concentration of the calcium and phosphate. So in this way, the bone and blood can like have relation to each other. Whenever there is like extra amount of these minerals, calcium and phosphate, we're gonna have more like activity for osteoblast, and in this way the osteoblast can use the calcium and phosphate for bone deposition, and then they are going to collect these minerals from the blood, store in the bone. Or when we have like low amount of calcium and phosphate in our blood, then the osteoclast can become more activated, and by bone reabsorption, they're gonna destroy the matrix and release the calcium and phosphate into the blood. And in this process of the bone remodeling, we have the hormones which can regulate the bone remodeling. The parathyroid hormone, which is going to be produced by parathyroid gland, parathyroid glands are the 4 tiny endocrine glands going to be found at the posterior aspect of thyroid glands, and also calcitonin hormone, which calcitonin hormone is a product of thyroid gland, which these hormones can affect the osteoclast activity, and then they can regulate the bone remodeling. Parathyroid hormone can increase the calcium of the blood by activating the osteoclast, and calcitonin is going to decrease the blood calcium level by deactivating the osteoclast, or by like encouraging the osteoblast to produce more bone tissue. And also bone remodeling can be affected in response to the mechanical stress. There is a question that to test your understanding so far, and I'm asking which of the following is necessary for long bone growth in lengths. So the articular cartilage, epiphyseal line, preosteum, and epiphyseal plate. Please comment in the down below which one you think is the correct answer for this question based on your understanding so far. Okay, let's continue. The last part of our bone tissue is repair of bone fracture. One more time, we talked about the bone formation, we talked about the bone growth, we talked about the bone remodeling, and now we are going to talk about the repair of bone. If the bone is broken or fracture happened, how the bone can be repaired or be healed. So we have 2 different types of the fracture: simple fracture and compound fractures. In simple fracture, when the bone breaks into 2 pieces without piercing the skin, it's called simple fracture. For compound fracture, this is more serious. It's when the broken bone pierces through the skin. So whether it's a simple or compound fracture, the goal is to get the bone back in its proper position through reduction. If we are going to use surgery to get the bone back in its proper position, it's called open reduction. And if without surgery, we're going to get the bone back in its proper position, it's called closed reduction. And here are some example of different type of fractures which you can just study by yourself. I'm not gonna asking you the different type of fractures for your quiz or exam. It's important to know the stages of healing a bone fracture by order, which the first one is hematoma formation. Next, we have fibrocartilaginous formation or soft callus formation. Then we have bony callus formation, and the final stage is bone remodeling. When a bone breaks, because the bone is a very vascularized structure, and also we can find many blood vessels in the periosseum, so we can see break of the blood vessels found in the periosseum and also inside of the bone. So bleeding happened, and then the clotted blood formation is going to be found at the injured site. So we call this the first stage as hematoma formation, as hemo means blood and toma means mass. So the clotted blood formation happening at this stage, which at this stage we can see inflammation. So this region gonna be swollen, you can see the bruise, and then the next stage, which we are going to start formation of the new bone. At first we have to clean this area. So after cleaning this area, the cells found in the periosseum and also endosteum, the bone producing cells, they are going to proliferate and then fill this region of the or the gap between the broken sides, and now we have the cartilage or the kind of mixture of the connective tissue and cartilage, which is called fibrocartilage. So at this stage we have fibrocartilaginous callus formation, which is a also called as soft callus. Then the next stage, at the soft callus start being bony or ossification is happening inside of the soft callus, and then we're gonna have the bony callus formation. And then the final stage is bone remodeling. So actually the soft callus formation is happening within a few days after fracture. Bony callus formation is happening within a week, and then it's continue to about 2 months to become firm and stronger, and then after month remodeling is happen. The bone remodeling, it's gonna remove the excess bony material from both the exterior of the bone shaft and the interior of the medullary cavity. Then there are some disorders for the bones that we should know. The osteoporosis. In osteoporosis, the bones are porous and light. Osteoporosis makes your bones weak and porous, almost like a sponge. This makes them lighter and more likely to break. So in osteoporosis is going to be characterized by low bone mass. So the people with osteoporosis have bones with low density or mass, meaning they're not as strong as they should be. And then normally your body breaks down old bone and builds new bone, but in osteoporosis the balance is disrupted. More bone is being broken down, we have more reabsorption than it's being built up or deposition. And mostly women after menopause, they can get osteoporosis. This is because the hormone changes during menopause can speed up the bone loss. Next, we have osteomalacia and rickets. There are both conditions where the bones don't get enough minerals to be strong and healthy, but osteomalacia affects adults and rickets affects children. Then the last one is Paget disease. Causes bones to grow and break down too quickly, leading to weakened and deformed bones, while osteosarcoma is a type of bone cancer where cells grow uncontrollably, forming a tumor in the bone. And then there are some roots to remember, like artic means joint, the clast means break, like we have osteoclast. Osteo means bone, so as you can see, and then when you know clast means break or destroy, the osteoclast means the bone destroying cells. Or we have the hile or heel, as means glass, so the hyaline cartilage is like a glass shape cartilage. Or we have this term as like porous, means opening, so the osteoporosis means we have the porous or the like bones with loss of opening that you can see here. Actually, you can like compare the healthy bone, the normal bone, and a porous bone. So you can find many of these porous or opening inside of these bones. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. If you have any question, feel free to send me an email. Thank you and have a good day.